Mr. Chairman, you do this all the time.
I do.
When a question is going badly for a Democrat witness, you jump in and try to save the witness. He knows how to answer a question. When I ask a question, he gives a speech on a different topic because he doesn't want to answer it. My question is simple. Do you condemn this event that was celebrating Palestinian Islamic Jihad? Yes or no?
You should not bully the witnesses nor try to bully members of the committee.
Asking a question is not bullying. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mangi, last week, the American people were horrified to watch the testimony of the presidents of Harvard, MIT, and Penn, where all three of them failed to speak clearly denouncing anti-Semitism. All three of them had difficulty, in fact, refused to say that calls for genocide of the Jewish people constitute harassment at their policies. One of those three presidents has since resigned. I think the other two are likely to resign and should resign. I will say when I look at your record, I am troubled by a number of things, but I am perhaps most troubled by the fact that you served as an advisory board member for the Center for Security, Race, and Rights at Rutgers Law School from 2019 to 2023. And sadly, I think that center embraces the same extremism and myopia that we saw on display from the presidents of Harvard, MIT, and Penn. While you were a board member, on May 29th, 2021, Professor Sahar Aziz, who's the director of the center on which you served as an advisory board member, signed a letter which was posted on the center's website which read, quote, "A ceasefire does not end the colonial conditions of the structural violence and inequality that Palestinians live under." It goes on to say, quote, "The Palestinian rights to freedom, security in their homes, to return, self-determination, and to be free of violent occupation are well established under international law. The language of both sideness, of timeliness, or religious conflict, with moments of escalation, erases the military, economic, media, and diplomatic power that Israel, as an occupying force, has over Palestine." Do you agree with those sentiments?
Senator Cruz, let me say first, with regard to the genocide issue that you raised, any calls for genocide of any people are absolutely horrific. And there could be nothing that is more contrary and antithetical to everything that I stand for. Now, with regard to the center, as I mentioned earlier, I served on an advisory board. Its function was to meet approximately once a year and to focus on what areas of academic research at Rutgers Law School might be productive to engage in. For example...
So you signed up to be on an advisory board and you just didn't know what they were doing? You just didn't treat the responsibility very seriously?
The responsibility, Senator, was to advise on areas of academic research, not on the day-to-day.
You're a practicing lawyer. I want to return to the question I asked,
yes,
which is, do you agree with the sentiments that I just read you from the director of the center on whose advisory board you served?
Senator, I have no knowledge of that speech or statements that you're referencing.
Do you believe that Israel is an occupying force in Palestine?
Senator, the history of that region is very complex, and I don't claim to be an expert in it.
All right, let me ask you this. Same letter posted by the same director, quote, "We are in awe of the Palestinian struggle to resist violent occupation, removal, erasure, and the expansion of Israeli settler colonialism." Do you agree with that sentiment?
I'll give you the same answer, Senator, which is that is a very complex history in the region.
It needs context?
No, it means it is a history that is the domain of policymakers.
So no, it is not. Israel is not a violent occupier engaged in settler colonialism. That is a political statement, and you are unwilling to disagree with it, which suggests there's a reason you were on that board. There was a reason. It's actually quite remarkable that you're not even willing to disclaim the statement, "We're in awe of the Palestinian struggle to resist," in light of October 7th.
Senator, I stated this earlier, but let me repeat it because I think it's critically important.
Do you condemn the atrocities of the Hamas terrorists?
Yes, that's what I was about to address, Senator.
And
The
is there
events-
any
the
justification?
question.
Is there any justification for those atrocities?
Senator, I'll repeat myself. The events of October 7th were a horror involving the deaths of innocent civilians. That is
I'm going to ask
contrary.
the question again. Is there any justification for those atrocities?
That was going to be my next sentence, Senator, which is, I have no patience, none, for any attempts to justify or defend those events.
Well, let me ask you this. What do you think about the fact that the center on whose board you served hosted, on the 20th anniversary of September 11th, an event with a convicted terrorist who pleaded guilty? Dr. Sami al-Iranian was convicted of conspiracy to contribute services or benefits to a terrorist organization, and Dr. Hatem Bazian explicitly called for intifada against the United States. Do you agree with those sentiments?
Senator, I'd like to say two things on that point. Number one, on 9/11, I was in New York. I saw what happened. It was my city that was attacked. Number two, I've never heard of this event prior to today. It was never brought to the advisory board, which meant once a year to talk about academic issues.
Are you willing to denounce the center on whose board you served inviting a convicted terrorist, a supporter of Palestinian Islamic Jihad? By the way, Palestinian Islamic Jihad participated in the October 7th atrocities. Are you willing to condemn their inviting a supporter of their to attack America and to support the reasons for the September 11th attacks?
Senator, I don't think anyone can feel more strongly about what happened on 9/11 than someone who was there, who saw with their own eyes smoke billowing from their
But
towers.
you won't condemn this.
I
Senator,
will-
let him complete his answer, would you? Your time
He's
is
filibustering and not answering
He's not
questions. And so I'm going to ask him to
filibustering.
answer the question I ask instead of giving a speech on a different topic. And Mr.
cannot-
Chairman, you do this all the time.
I do.
When a question is going badly for a Democrat witness, you jump in and try to save the witness. He knows how to answer a question. When I ask a question, he gives a speech on a different topic because he doesn't want to answer it. My question is simple. Do you condemn this event that was celebrating Palestinian Islamic Jihad? Yes or no?
You should not bully the witnesses nor try to bully members of the committee.
Asking a question is not bullying.
Complete your answer, please.
Thank you, Chair Durbin. I'll answer your question very directly, Senator Cruz. I will condemn without equivocation any terrorism, any terrorist, or any act of terrorism, or any defense of any act of terrorism. I don't know.
This event?
I don't know anything about this event or who these people are. I've never heard of any of them. If someone on there is a terrorist, I condemn them.
Mr. Monge, if I could just start with you, I just want to make sure I understood your answers to my colleagues, including Senator Cruz. Let me just read you something. I just want to know if you agree with this or not. This should be simple. Here's a statement. The demand to center Israel's right to self-defense, that's in scare quotes, self-defense, erases the colonial context and delegitimizes the Palestinian right to resistance. We are in awe of the Palestinian struggle to resist violent occupation, removal, erasure, and the expansion of Israeli settler colonialism. Do you agree with that, yes or no? I realize you didn't write it, and you may not know who the author is, may never have heard of these people before. I just want to know, does this represent your view, yes or no?
Senator, any attempt to justify what happened on October 7th, I have absolutely no...
Well, that's not the context here. This is talking about any discussion of Israel's right to self-defense erases the colonial context. It's calling Israel a colonial state. So could we just answer my question? Do you agree with this, yes or no?
Senator, I don't claim to be an expert on the Middle East. I don't have the historic or regional
That sounds
expertise.
like a maybe. That's a maybe? Maybe you agree? Can
No.
we get a yes or a no?
Each say this is a policy question or a question for
Well, no,
foreign
wait.
experts.
That's what I don't understand. By the way, this was written by the director of the center you sat on the board of, that you advised. This is the director, not some random professor, the director. who published it in an open letter. So when you say it's a policy, what's the policy about calling Israel a violent settler colonialist state? Why is that a policy question?
Senator, that is not a statement that I had any involvement with.
Okay, good. So would you condemn it then? You say this does not represent your views.
Senator, I have no basis as a judicial nominee to cast views on the Middle East or what does or does not happen
This
there.
is what you're not answering my question. I'm asking you whether this individual who said that Israel was a violent settler colonial state, I'm just trying to get you to say, do you agree with that or not? And I've asked you now 4 different times, 4 different ways. You're not answering me. Why is that? Why can't you just say, no, I don't agree with this? Let's try again.
Yeah.
Do you agree with this statement, yes or no?
Senator, in order to agree or disagree with any statement, I need to have a sufficient factual background to assess it.
So in other words, you can't say whether or not Israel is a violent colonial state. You think that's a difficult question?
Oh, God. That is not an issue with which I have any expertise.
Is the Holocaust also a difficult question? Does that need context?
No.
Is that a policy question?
I am quite happy to address the Holocaust, Senator.
Why aren't you happy to address this then? Why is it that an individual in the center that you directed who calls Israel a violent colonialist state, those are racist comments, why can't you condemn that? I don't understand it. You won't answer my questions, you won't answer Senator Cruz's questions, you wouldn't answer Senator Kennedy's questions. I don't understand why this is complicated.
Senator, I'm Pakistani. I didn't grow up in the Middle East.
I didn't either. I didn't either, but that doesn't mean that I can't say that somebody who says that a Jewish state is a violent colonialist enterprise is wrong. This isn't a policy question, it's a moral question. This is a moral issue.
Senator, I am not in a position to make any policy pronouncements about actions in the Middle East.
Does Israel have a right to exist?
Yes.
Should American Jews be safe in their homes and on their campuses?
Senator, there is
Just
no
yes
one.
or no, please. Spare me the lectures. Yes or no. Did you advise against this letter? You sat on the advisory board. Did you advise against it?
I never even heard of that letter.
How is that possible? What did you do on this board for all these years? This was years before you left it.
It's an advisory board that met once a year to talk about academic research.
Do you not think it's relevant to the setting in the academy that Jewish students might feel unsafe when they have a tenured professor who's the director of a center saying that Israel is a violent colonialist state? Do you think that may not have an effect on the educational environment?
Senator, I abhor.
But you didn't care to look into it?
May I respond?
But I've heard your answers, and they're all move over here, look over here. You're not answering any of my questions. And I can't figure out why. I can't figure out why you won't just say that this was wrong. So you didn't advise against it. You didn't condemn it. You didn't look into the center's activities. Do you regret that? Do you regret not at the time taking a moral stand against these frankly racist condemnations of Jewish Americans, Jewish people in the state of Israel? Do you think it was wrong for you to be silent?
Senator, I didn't know anything about it.
Why didn't you? Didn't you have a moral obligation to know about a center that you sat on the board of for years, whose director was calling Jewish people colonialist, violent settlers? Do you not have a moral obligation to know and say something?
That is not the function of an academic advisory board, but I abhor
But it is the function of a responsible jurist and a responsible citizen. And I would just suggest to you that you failed it. And your inability to just say, this was wrong, this shouldn't have been said, this kind of language and rhetoric is what has led directly to Jewish American students now being called out on campuses, in classrooms, told to stand up and go and stand in a corner because they need to feel what it's like to be colonized. I'm sure you've seen the reports of this happening across the country. This is happening now.
Senator, your time's expired. Mr. Manji, would you like to complete an answer?
Thank you, Chair Durbin. Any acts of anti-Semitism or any bigotry, including anti-Muslim bigotry, on college campuses is abhorrent. My children will be going to university soon. I want them to feel safe, and I want the children of my Jewish friends and colleagues to feel safe too.
Well, you think you'll take a greater interest when your children are on campus, maybe, than you did for the last 3 years?
Senator, your time has expired.
Ms. Berner, you didn't tell Senator Graham the truth, did you?
Senator, I took an oath to tell the truth, and I have done so faithfully.
Now, on February 22nd, 2018, you spoke to the American Constitution Society, and this is what you said. The right to work movement is deeply racist. You said that, didn't you?
Senator, I do not have that speech in front of me. I have spoken on a number of occasions about the
You
history.
turned your notes over to us. You didn't read them before you turned them over?
Senator, I've spoken on a number of occasions about the history. I was not speaking
Are you
about.
saying that you didn't say that?
Senator, I've spoken on a number of occasions about the
Yes, ma'am. Are
history.
you saying that you didn't say that?
I have turned over all of my notes from my speeches.
I don't think you're telling the truth, Ms. Berner. Let me ask you another question. Do you remember Mindy Sturgey?
No, sir, I do not remember.
I'm embarrassed you don't remember her. She was one of your union members. She alleged that she was the victim of sexual discrimination at one of your local unions. This is what she said. She alleged that one of the executives there asked her, quote, if she enjoyed rough sex and bondage. She said that the chapter president, Mr. Dave Regan, asked her, quote, does the carpet match the drapes? And, quote, what would you do for some jewelry? She alleged that Mr. Regan told another staffer, quote, that the only way she is getting a job is if she sucks my member of the male anatomy. Another employee said in an affidavit that Mr. Reagan, quote, went around asking women if he could sniff their panties, close quote, at an October 2017 work party. She said another executive, quote, grabbed my upper thigh while I was driving. And she wrote you and asked you to investigate. And you said no, didn't you?
Senator, I have dedicated my career to representing women and families. That has been my work.
You said no, didn't you?
Senator,
You told her that let her own chapter represent or investigate its own misconduct, didn't you?
Senator, I'm going to give you additional time, but I want the witness to be able to fully answer the question.
Senator, the letter that you are quoting from, I wrote in my capacity as counsel to my client. It was the position of my client, and I was acting as an advocate.
You refused to investigate, though, didn't you?
Senator, I believe that I have faithfully adhered to my obligations as an attorney for my client.
I don't think Ms. Sturgis would agree with you. In fact, Mr. Reagan, the chapter president, is still the president, isn't he?
I
You don't
believe
even know?
Dave Reagan is the president of one of our local union, of one of
Wow.
SEIU's local unions. Yes.
Wow. Mr. Mangy. I just want to be sure I understand your testimony, sir. And congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
From 2019 to 2023, you were a board member of the Center for Security, Race, and Rights at Rutgers Law School. Is that right?
I was a member of an advisory board, Senator.
Right. Most boards advise, don't they?
Well, Senator, boards of directors govern an institution. Advisory boards do not have a governance role. They merely provide counsel.
Do you know of any boards that don't offer advice?
Well, they're different in their legal function.
Okay. Y'all held an event on the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attack on America. You held an event on the 20th anniversary attack, 9/11 attack on America. And you invited as speakers. Your first speaker was Dr. Sami Al-Arian. He was convicted of conspiring to provide material support, convicted in a court, to the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. And the Islamic Jihad participated in the October 7th massacre and mass rape. Your second speaker was Dr. Rahab Abdulhadi, who has organized panels for the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, one terrorist, Leila Khalad. Ms. Khalad hijacked planes. You invited her as a speaker, or her mentor as a speaker. The third speaker you invited, Mr. Hatim Bazilian, was the co-founder of Students for Justice in Palestine and has publicly called for an intifada in the United States. Is this the way you celebrate 9/11? Have I said anything that was inaccurate?
Yes, Senator.
Tell me.
Senator, my involvement with the center at Rutgers Law School, which is a preeminent law school in the state of New
I
Jersey,
can tell.
is on an advisory board that, when my role was limited to providing advice on academic areas of research, primarily through a meeting held once a year. With regard to the event that you are describing, I've never heard of that event prior to today. It was never presented to the advisory board that I was part of. I know nothing about it. I know nothing about the speakers. I've never heard of any of those people.
How
So-
can you sit on an organization that would invite these terrorists, convicted terrorists, Counselor?
Senator, it is an
You
advisory...
didn't resign.
Senator, I never heard of that event until today. It is an advisory board where my role...
So you just had an epiphany today?
Senator, your time has expired.